I went to school. I was the first to graduate from high school. I was the first to go to college. I was the first one to get a career job right out of college. I think I was making about $90,000 at the age of 21. So that's close to six figures, right? $90,000. And I was the first in my family to get married. I was the first to have a baby and all those different things. I had everything but the house and a picket fence. So I'm like, I'm living the American dream, right? I'm like, I got the American dream. But what I realized, even with the what I thought was the American dream, I had an apartment, I didn't have the house, but I knew that the house would eventually come. What I thought was the American dream was boring. It was a boring life. At a very early age, I knew that I wanted more. I knew that I did not want to find myself in my mother's shoes crying when I became a parent. I knew that I wanted to have more. And so for me, more was what I believed was the American dream. So I went to school and I knew that at the time I bought into the American dream that, oh, well, maybe if I go to school, get an education and get a really good job, then I won't have to find myself crying to provide for my children. I won't have to find myself at Payless, providing the cheap shoes for my kids. And maybe I can buy them Pumas and Adidas and all those different things, right? And so I bought into the American dream. Anybody bought into the American dream? Anybody was told about the American dream? Go to school, get a job, maybe buy a house, get married, have some children, and then you'll have a picket fence, right? I think everybody in America, in fact, everybody outside of America believe that the American dream is real, right? And we all believe that the American dream was real, but that's what I believed in, right? And so for me, I did that, right? I went to school. I was the first to graduate from high school. I was the first to go to college. I was the first one to get a career job right out of college. I think I was making about $90,000 at the age of 21. So that's close to six figures, right? $90,000. And I was the first in my family to get married. I was the first to have a baby and all those different things. I had everything but the house and a picket fence. So I'm like, I'm living the American dream, right? I'm like, I got the American dream. But what I realized, even with what I thought was the American dream, I had an apartment, I didn't have the house, but I knew that the house would eventually come. What I thought was the American dream was boring. It was a boring life. That was boring for me. I was like, wait, I went to high school, I went to college, I have hundreds of thousands of dollars that I owe in student loans, and next to me in my job, my career job, is someone who dropped out of high school. They're making the same amount of money. For me, that was like, oh my God, how is this possible? I bought into the American dream and I felt duped. But someone who dropped out of high school was able to sit next to me making the same amount of money, but yet they don't owe hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans. It did not make sense for me, right? And then at that moment, that was the awakening moment for me. At that moment, I started thinking about all the things that we were taught in school, right? All the things. One of the things that I thought about was like, wait a minute. Also, Christopher Columbus didn't discover America. I just realized that, right? People were here. We were gentrified, right? But yet we were taught those things. And I also was taught in college, because I went to school and I had a business degree, that it takes 2 to 5 years to grow a business. Anybody that has a business was told that it takes 2 to 5 years to grow a business. And if you make it to 5 years and turn a profit, you're one of the lucky ones, right? We've been told that. A lot of us have been told that same exact thing. We all bought into that American dream and we all believed that stuff was real. But what I started doing during this awakening moment was I started reevaluating the things that I was taught versus reality. I started having a aha moment for myself, right? Now, we were told growing up, and we've heard this so many times through the indoctrination of education, through the indoctrination of media and press, that education is key. We were taught that, right? But what we were not taught was it wasn't the education that we learned in school. It's not that education. It's self-education and the application thereof. It's the educating yourself about the truth. There's lies and there's truths. And the things that we were taught in school were all lies. Anybody have that awakening moment? You're like, yeah, Christopher Columbus didn't discover America. Yeah, this person didn't really invent the heart surgery. A black man did. Yeah, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're just like, why are they teaching us these things, right? And so there's a such thing called the miseducation. There's a whole book about it, right? It's called Dumbing Us Down. This is the name of the book that I've read. I highly recommend reading it. And it talks about how the education system was really designed to dumb you down so that you could become a worker, middle-class worker. And guess what workers do? Workers struggle. They struggle to make ends meet. They struggle to pay their bills, and they are taxed higher than anybody else. People who make millions and billions of dollars pay less taxes when they're smart than those who have a traditional 9 to 5 working really hard in middle class. Middle class is taxed the most, right? And so all of these things I began to educate myself about. And then what I learned was I started doing a research on people who are successful versus people who are just regular, ordinary people that are struggling. I did not want to become one of those regular, ordinary people that are struggling. And what I learned about people who are highly successful is they owned businesses. So for those of you who raised your hand and said, I have a business, I've already started a business, you have already gotten yourself into the game. Now, the problem is most entrepreneurs do not know what they have. Most entrepreneurs do not know how to leverage their business to create wealth. Most entrepreneurs are not educated on truth that they need to know to turn their business into a cash flowing machine. And I also learned in business that you do not need to have you don't necessarily have to have a business loan in order to grow a business, because everybody's like, where do I get business startup capital? Where do I get a venture capitalist? What do I need to do? Because this is the things that they tell you in the media that you have to have, right? Success actually leaves real clues, but those are the clues that are misleading, right? And so what I learned was that I needed to have a mentor who was already attained success. And so mentorship was very key. And so what I learned with mentors was that, number one, it does not take 2 to 5 years to grow a business if you're doing business with the government. That's what I learned from my mentor. You can make 6 figures in a year, but you can also make 6 figures in a month, because government contracts is going to allow you to be able to do that. And I say that because when you make 6 figures in a year, that ain't no money. It's still no money. You're still going to work really hard to get there. And it's going to be a struggle to pay your bills. And unless you have switched the key from employee to entrepreneur, unless you switched your mind from employee to entrepreneur, you're going to be taxed 50% of that 6 figures. So let's just say that 6 figures is $100,000. You're going to be taxed $50,000.